My name is Andreas König. I'm a professor of strategy, innovation, and entrepreneurship here at the University of Passau. And it's my great pleasure of introducing, welcoming, and presenting our next distinguished keynote in our keynote series on the overall topic of digital platform ecosystems. And our guest will be Professor Carmelo Cenamo from the Copenhagen Business School. As you remember, this keynote series has the objective of developing a systemic, multidisciplinary perspective of the idiosyncratic characteristics and consequences and implications of digital platform ecosystems. And in the last two wonderful keynotes by Professors Robert Gregory and Callie Martin, we basically focused on the overall issues related to data sharing in the platform ecosystem and the notion that these ecosystems it's all about relationships with different parties, the different actors in the ecosystem. And today we will move forward and we will begin tapping into the overall topic of management and innovation and transformation and organization in the platform ecosystem and its competitive environment. And this idea that these digital platform ecosystems, they constitute new spheres of organizing and innovating, but also, of course, of competition. And in that context, in this context of management and competition in digital platform ecosystems, we are thrilled to welcome you, Carmelo. It's a great pleasure. Professor Cenamo is Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at Copenhagen Business School. And he's also affiliated professor at the SDA Bocconi School of Management. And he has been a faculty member at Bocconi University, visiting researcher and fellow at Harvard University, IE Business Schools, and many other. And he's a frequent keynote speaker and a busy man, and at World Economic Forum, TEDx, and so on. And he's published in many of our leading journals, SMJ, OrgScience, JMS, and so forth. And Carmelo has been known as an expert, especially on this issue of policy and competition. And certainly, if we look at the implications of digital platform ecosystems, these are absolutely fundamental to our understanding of digital platform ecosystems, but of course also to understanding what that means for managers in established organizations, for entrepreneurs, for policymakers, because the societal implications are huge. And in this regard, we are absolutely thrilled and pleasured, Carmelo, to having you, and we thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to your keynote as usual. This keynote will be followed by a Q&A session, which I try to moderate, and we look forward to this. Before I hand over to you, Carmelo, just a few remarks. So we will record, as usual, this your presentation. So any question that is raised during the time of your presentation will be recorded. However, we will stop the recording after the presentation. So during the Q&A part, we will not record, and all questions can be asked without the danger of asking a question that you don't want to be recorded. Yeah, with that, I think I hand over. You can raise your questions in the chat or the F&A, the Q&A box of the Zoom. Yeah, we look forward. Professor Cenamo, welcome to the University of Passau. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a real pleasure for me. Thanks. So I guess I can start sharing my screen and give me some thumbs up if everything looks great on your side. All right. So again,
perfect.
Thanks. So it's very, I mean, great pleasure and an honor to be, part of the this series. Which, by the way, congratulations! It's a great initiative. So I'm also looking forward to the other speakers in the following coming, next after me. What I would like to do today during this 1 hour or so during my talk is I would really like to speak a little bit about, some of the points that we're bringing to the table that I believe can add to the conversation that you are having during this series, but that might be also at the center of more of the general public interest on what really are this digital platforms. Do we need to consider them as just simple utilities? Are there something more than that? So there are more of a sort of organizational or new organizing mode, and if there are new types of organizations, what is that they actually do, and what are the implications of that? So I will discuss the alternative perspectives on the role of platforms for value creation in particular. I will distinguish between the dominant view that sees platforms basically as a market channel, so to put it simple, that are driving value by enhancing mainly efficiency in transactions, and then contrast that to the view of platforms as ecosystem orchestrators that are shaping interactions and coordinating multiple actors to drive innovations in complementary products and service that form a sort of a joint value proposition for the users of the platform, and in this way driving value to the platforms and the related ancillary products that come with that. And obviously, as you already mentioned, this has also implications from strategically. This sounds great if you are a manager, because you can now produce value by leveraging others, not just your own assets in the company, but because now you have a greater orchestration power of shaping these interactions and directions of value creation. This also raises a number of concerns with the public in terms of regulations of whether this power extends to other organizations and covers and cuts across markets. So I will touch upon that in my implications. So I will touch I will end with some implications for management and policy as well, since I guess that question will come anyhow. But I will zoom in as an example of what is this orchestration that we're talking about, a particular specific mechanism of such ecosystem orchestration, which is the selective promotions. Practice that in themselves also they're raising some issues with regulators. Often they go under the self-preference, so-called self-preferencing practice, but this is also done for third parties complements that help. In this case, we will focus on again on the value creation, so on how the selective promotions help users discover new value propositions and reduce information ambiguity around their value when it comes to innovations that are hard to judge. So there, as you see, we will be talking here more about this as a mechanism to address information complexity issues and problems that might come with that, rather than information asymmetry. And that's what we refer to as market scaffolding. So I will give a zoom in a particular study that we're doing there. So what are digital platforms really, and how do they enable value creation? Okay, here we have the very straightforward logic that they're basically matchmakers, right, of demand side and supply side. So this builds hugely on the logic of driving efficiency. So making markets that are managed and based on platforms, or they emerge around the platforms being superior to what superior to the traditional markets, right? So, and how are this performed? Well, because in the platforms as market matchmakers, the digital infrastructure, they are basically digital infrastructures connecting actors, and on the demand side and on the supply side. Now, but leveraging, the algorithms, and you were mentioning before, Andreas, the issues of data, right? I mean, this is a new tool to manage the information flow, and through the interfaces as well, right? And other digital tools. Well, they can really reduce the transaction frictions and match users in a way that is superior compared to the other mechanisms that we know regulating traditional markets, which is the solo price-based mechanism, right? So the dynamics of the traditional market. So that is what carries, right, the information that is relevant for transactions in the traditional markets. But this information is in fact augmented in the platform markets by the other tools that the platforms use in order to coordinate the transactions. And this way, therefore, right, the platform is really providing access to the market for both sides, but it's also enabling the smooth transactions between the two sides. That's how value is basically driving in this context, right? And while the emphasis here is usually on size of the network being related directly to the value of the platform, I will say that size is not the driver of value in itself, because a lot of the value is in fact created by the ranking and matching criteria that the platform puts in place. So there is in any case an organizational aspect here, and so the capabilities of the platforms in really doing the matching based on the information, so performing that coordination, is critical for size to come up, right? So for the platform to network to increase in the first place. So having just technology out there won't help, right? And that's why we observe lots of failures in platforms failing, despite the network externalities effects, because it's not just enough to have this infrastructure out there. So value really comes from the matching and how efficient the platform is in enabling that. So if we look, right, I mean, from this perspective at a high level of abstractions, right, then the platform might just be a mean to access, one side of the market or the other side. So what does it do? It addresses externality problems in consumption, mainly with transactions that we know are cause of market failures. So the platform, and we know that we talk about, a lot about market failures or from having dominant platforms when we speak about the regulatory environment, but we should not forget that platforms are in themselves manifestations of market failures that have been addressed. So the platform first address market failures and allows markets to emerge in the first place, right? So without platforms, many of the new services and products that now we have, and the sharing economy is a clear example of that, will not exist without the platform. So we need to be clear about that, right? Because we have tons of market failures there. You will never rent the house from a stranger in the other side of the ocean, and you will never get into a car of a stranger if it wasn't for the matching and coordination role of the platform addressing mainly information asymmetry problems in this case. What are the implications from this view, right? For platform governance, therefore? Well, that the governance, mechanism that the platforms put in place in performing this coordination, they should precisely be, aiming at minimizing the frictions on one side, right? I mean, frictions to participate in the exchange in the market. So both, right, membership and usage, and then maximize the positive externalities. So the, opportunities for interacting, for value exchange with others, right? So there is a clear efficiency-driven, obviously, aim here that governance has to have. Now, is this what platforms do? Not quite, right? Or at least they don't limit themselves in performing as, a network externality maximizer and a friction minimizer, right? So platforms do much more than that. And if we think, for instance, of the quintessential most valuable platform on earth, right? I mean, the company that is the most value one, Apple, is, you know, full of contradictions, right? It doesn't fit really the picture here. To start with, it doesn't maximize network. To the opposite, it selects out people. Why is that? Well, the issue is that platforms, in fact, they are a tool to shape interactions in the first place. They don't simply coordinate to maximize the interactions, but they might have an interest, and whether that is a solo self-interest or an interest that, you know, serve basically the users and the complementors is a different matter, but there might be an interest, right, from the platform side in diverting the market away from the most efficient transaction for different reasons. And, you know, whether that is to capture greater value for themselves, so not leaving, you know, all of the value on the table, but steering some of the transactions, you know, towards products or areas that are not necessarily coming from the platform firm themselves, but might be more rewarding, right? I mean, they may lead to higher revenues or higher returns for the platform. So they might be interested in driving transaction towards, you know, value increasing domains, right? Or to push development effort and incentives, right, of complementors, so aligned incentive of complementors in other directions that are more, you know, for strategic purposes of the platform, right? Because maybe they are of more strategic relevance to the platform or where the platform wants to take the development of the technology. So there are areas maybe of the technology that the platforms consider sort of that. It doesn't want to develop further, but it wants to steer, you know, new areas of the technology. Well, it has an interest in driving the ecosystem that direction. So if Apple comes and wants now to promote the you know, features of virtual augmented reality, right, that comes with the new phone and the operating system, of course, it has an interest in bringing the incentives and development effort of developers, right, towards that direction. And so that's where the focus is going to be. So shaping the vision for the ecosystem, it does, you know, has this implication, right, that you might cut off some areas and then make it clear to the ecosystem that that's where they should focus right now, right? So basically, this is like, you know, strategic purpose to forge the market in a way that is compatible with the intended platform market strategic goals and overall identity. So Apple, you know, wants to be perceived as one particular way of organizing and the consumption experience, and therefore, you know, is very hands-on in orchestrating the ecosystem. So platforms in this sense, right, they do much more than just enhance the transaction efficiency. Sometimes actually they bring frictions because they want to orchestrate the ecosystem in one particular directions, right? In this sense, right, there are new organizational forms, right, for organizing innovation in a way to offer curated and integrated solutions to the customer. Now, these solutions do not come only from the elements and components by the firm, right, provided by the firms, but they extend to the complementary products and services that of other firms, right? So now it's basically what we refer in a paper with Michael Jacobidis and Annabelle Gower as the collective enterprise. Right? So ecosystems, they become a new ways to coordinate, you know, value creations options where you have that are prone to failure because you have this co-specializations of the assets, right, that needs to be coordinated, and yet they are not tied to the same firm. So they do not happen within the same hierarchy, right? So because there are inter-firm relationships. So how do you do that? Well, you basically structure and, you know, relationship through the ecosystems. So basically, right, by offering this common share assets that others can build upon, the platform now can both drive greater innovation by external firms, but also innovate itself in complementary service. So there is a co-evolutionary aspect here that the ecosystem is also used by the platform firm as a way to discover where the value options are, right? Where do they lay? So it's not an ex-ante design, well-designed, you know, anticipated process. Many of the, you know, value creation or areas, right, they're basically being discovered on the go through, you know, letting the ecosystem basically evolve and point to, you know, some of this possibility. And so we have evidence, right? I mean, from management studies that indicating that these distinctive choices that platforms make to differentiate the ecosystems become, an increasingly important dimension of the value of the platform to its users. So it doesn't come just from the network in itself, let alone the network size. So what are the implications in terms of governance, right? So if we put basically these two views together, right? Certainly, I'm depicting here as one and the other, but they should not be considered as, being contrasting in a sense, right? There are different views, but they do point to different aspects that they're both managed by the platform. So it's just that, we in strategy, we tend to focus more on this orchestration part and the organizing aspects because we do care about the managerial problems, right? That if you are a platform manager, right? But the two are obviously in place, and platform governance entails basically and implies that the platform has to perform both of these functions, right? So the efficiency angle as a matchmaker that I already mentioned, right? I mean, that would be mainly the mainstream economics view of platform, but the coordination of demand is the key aspect of the platform governance, with internalizing the network externalities towards the most efficient transaction, right? But then we have the strategy angle where this orchestration role implies that the governance that is put in place is really a value shaper mechanism, right? So shaping market interactions to steer value towards particular directions. And what we see through the different studies is that there is not just a focus on value creation, but often this shaping exercise is in place because the platform has to take care of balancing the value creation aspect with the value capture, where value capture is not just for the platform firm point of view, but also and particularly from the complementor's point of view, right? So imagine that if you let the market just driving, right, towards the most efficient transactions, eventually you might end up with just one player in every single niche winning, right, all of the demand because it's the most efficient one, provided the highest price quality ratio to the consumers in the platform. Is this beneficial for the platform? Maybe not, right? Because then you have problems of limited number of complementors that the less efficient get out of the platforms, that you might have a limit in terms of variety that you can offer to the consumers. So you also need to take into account the long-term prospects of the platforms, and take care also the fact that there needs to be some redistribution in the platforms to guarantee that there is enough value capture options for everybody, or at least those that are deemed valuable by the platform, so that you still have competition and tensions within the platform that drives down prices and provides value to the consumers. So monopoly within the platforms might actually be bad for the platforms, even if that it's coming from the most efficient transaction. So this value creation, value capture tensions are usually what is in place, and we see these ecosystems and what this different governance practice try to strike a balance on. So this means that if we look particularly at competition, right? So platform competitions, well, we need to really have an integrated view of these two aspects, and particularly here in one article I was trying to really think the different dimensions and ways to put this together, and came up basically with this visual, right, with these two dimensions which are not to be considered orthogonal. But as you see, there are feedbacks, right, that comes from one dimension to the other, and that's where the complexity lay in understanding this. But basically the message here is that if we see platforms only from a purely efficiency logic, we might really miss what is truly the distinctive nature of platform competition, and that's about alternative modes or modalities, if you want, of organizing economic activity and markets. So we might be thinking, right, that Google Android systems and Apple iOS systems, right? There are, two direct competing systems that provides, the same core platform services. But if you go a little bit beyond, what is in the surface, we understand that those are two different animals, right? They base, their business model on two different ways of driving value and also capturing value for those participating in the system and those running the system. So they are organizing basically the both the innovation activities and the interactions that are happening there in completely different ways, right? So they are differentiated themselves in terms of how they drive the ecosystem, because they have a fundamentally starting point that is different, right, from the platform firm, right? So they have different strategic goals and they start from different perspectives. So they drive the value in different ways, right? So we should probably look at to what extent competition is between similar modes of facilitating value exchange, right, for the transactions. So that's it, basically primarily focus on the efficiency of matchmaking coordination, and between, right, alternative modes of creating value through distinctive or ecosystem orchestration, right? So those are the design choices that, we should leave also to, the freedom of the platform to exercise. Otherwise, if we take rid of that, we have, standardized utilities that only compete on the base on platform size and the network, right? And how efficient they are in driving that. But we kill, the opportunities of coming up with a distinctive way of organizing the whole service, right? So an important aspect then of this is that instead of thinking of, having just a level playing field within the platforms and thus let the market, win and pick, the winner among the complements, in many cases, what we observe and what is that there might be a need for the platform to actively manage the market to promote more unique complements that otherwise would be hardly discovered or chosen by consumers, simply because they are not in the radar zone of their attentions, or because they do not arise in the market as, the first or default option in that category, right? So they depart maybe from that, and therefore, they are harder to be discovered. And then, the more participants you have in the platforms, the harder this will be, right? So without help from the platform, right, without different mechanisms that are put in place, it will be hard for us, to go after this. And even if we discover about this new value propositions, it might be hard for us to judge and compare to the other products, simply maybe because there are no reviews, no ratings about this, so we don't know how to judge them, right? Now, that's exactly what we find in a study about the Kickstarter crowdfunding platform, where we find that by selectively promoting some projects that the platform can enhance the ability of more innovative projects to succeed in the market. And they also reduce the level of market concentration in terms of the funds that are then, obtained by the project in that given category. So let me zoom in into the study. So the title here the study is called The Love Effect. And this is because the platform we studied, Kickstarter, has created a new category, basically, of projects that they call projects we love. Don't know how familiar you are with the contest, but they basically, it's a new category where you go to the interface, you can spot this category, and it's a way to selectively promote projects that they deem valuable. So that those are just selected by them. It's not the users, right? I mean, this isn't like the other rankings that you might have there, top downloads or stuff like that, right? That are basically historically based ranking, right? So based on the amount of transactions and likes at these things, right? I mean, things are suggested to you. That will be more of a personalizations, right? Recommendation systems, or that would feel more into the category of matching, because then they can match, right? What has been judged as valuable by other users to, your profile, to the extent that they think, that there is compatibility between the profiles. But here we are in the unknown chart, right? So here we are about projects that, you know, are just being launched. And so there is no reference point here. How do you, you know, evaluate this? How do you make this discoverable? And, you know, how do you make this being selected by users, right? And this is not just a problem of Kickstarter, right? It's actually pretty, you know, present and prevalent across the board here. So there's love affair with the platforms, and it's also love affair by the platforms, right? So there are many platforms that have this love, you know, whatever the product and the content is, right? So Apple notoriously did a major overhaul of the App Store a few years ago, and that was one of the last touch of John Eve before leaving Apple. It redesigned completely the interface of the app stores, and then they bring more curation into this. You know, one of the key aspects was this, introducing, you know, this new feature by Apple, you know, badge, basically, or category. Those are like the apps, you know, we love right now. So there are a number of reasons why they love these apps, right? So, and as I mentioned, many of them are strategic because maybe, you know, those are new apps featuring or leveraging some of the new recent, you know, technology functionalities in the operating system, or simply because, you know, they do things in the way that Apple would like, you know, the ecosystem to do. So there are a number of reasons why they do this curation in this way. Obviously, they are, you know, strategic in a sense. And then, you know, Booking.com has, you know, their top picks, you know, homes guest love. Here I have, you know, one of my favorites is The Fork, you know, for booking restaurants. And they have, you know, this curated insider list of restaurants, which basically they are picked and selected by the team inside the Fork, and it's about, you know, the trend and gourmet restaurants in the city, right? So, but they're picked by them, not by the users, right? So, what are the love projects that we study here, right? So, this is an example, right? And for Kickstarter, as you can see on the left, you have the, you know, a bunch of categories. Those are, you know, how you search, right, in the platforms and how they help you find. And you know, the projects we love are top of the right of the list here. So you can just click on it, and then you can browse through the different projects that at the moment, right, they are there running, and then, you know, they will present you basically these projects, right? Now, just some quick, you know, some descriptive, some trends. Now, as you can see here, you have two lines in here, and the one on the left, the 31st vertical. Having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry, this was Siri. The very first vertical gray line so indicates a policy change in the platform governance, where they move from, they open up basically the platform more. So they move from mandatory screening to just, you know, a more of a laissez-faire approach to let everybody get in. Okay. And as you can see, obviously, this was also in part anticipated by the entrepreneurs. And if you see the green line, that's the number of projects per quarter. It really skyrocketed, right? So it was basically really jump to in terms of the number of new projects, right, per quarter that enter. But that also had an impact, negative one, on the proportion of successful projects. So the more projects that we're in, right, we also see that many of them, you know, were failing in any case, right? So this might well be that the rate is the same, right? I mean, there was still, you know, an X% of projects failing probabilistically, right? And then by just increasing the numbers, what happens is that, you know, that also basically the proportion of successful projects go down. But what we observed then on the second line here, the vertical line, this is basically the switch that the platform had for the policy of the selective promotions. So they moved from something, they had that before, it was called Stuff Picks, and they moved to something that, you know, which is now the project we love, with a more elaborate list of criteria and they move also from, you know, just doing that manually and then being picked by the staff, what you know, what the name basically is very well reflecting, into moving into something more systematic. So they have a double screening now. It's first algorithms that upon, you know, the criteria that they have, they select, they flag potential projects that are deemed, you know, valuable to support, and then there is you know, an oversight, a human oversight on it, with a final decision to approve them. So it seems that, you know, they are producing something, right? So we see that then after the introductions here, we see the red line, the proportion of successful projects, they really go up, right? So we want to basically understand to what extent, you know, this has an impact on it, but it seems that from the trends lines, I mean, there is an impact there. So we want to understand, how does the selective promotion by the platform owner affects the value creation in the market? So that's the question we have. Now, here we have the timeline I just showed you, and you know, basically, as I mentioned, every project is first screened, you know, through the algorithm, and then by members of the team. What the algorithm does is that it reviews the keywords in the campaign. Then it also the creator, so who is the entrepreneur there, if there is any past track record of the platform or done similar campaigns, et cetera, and then, you know, they can be approved, rejected, flagged, or removed, right? But upon approving the project, then Kickstarter basically gives the creators the option of either launching the campaign right away, and then or receives help from the team, right, from the member of the staff, to make the project stand out. This implies basically canceling to, you know, minor things such as the way you present the campaign, the description, to, you know, more substantive aspects, right? So help with the marketing, with managing the project timeline, and all those things. You know, what do you have to offer, right? I mean, the kind of benefits you offer. So there is an active also role. It's not just the selection and the release of this information, but there is, you know, some support on behind that. Just, you know, a few descriptive statistics. Here are the macro categories. Okay, so we have for each of this category, then we have subcategories, and I think we have something like 191, I think, of such. So you have subcategories for each, but, you know, I just wanted to present this at the aggregate level, so you have a sense of what are we talking here. As you can see, there isn't a clear path, if you see there, from, you know, racial love campaigns. So, you know, there are some obviously that have, you know, a higher rate than others, but there isn't really, you know, some systematic relationship between the rate of, you know, in a given category, and then with the overall success rate in that category, right? So this makes, you know, a little more, you know, variance into the data. So what is clear is that obviously the campaigns that are picked as love campaigns, right, they have a high success rate. So I think that, you know, the list we have here is 79%, right, and basically 80%, right? So 80% of the love campaigns at minimum, right? So I mean, they end up then being successful, meaning that they reach the treasures of the goal that they have for funding that they pledge in the platform. Okay. But that's not what we are interested, right? We're interested in whether, you know, having these campaigns and then the extent of this, you know, selective promotions in a given category helps others also to raise, you know, more money. So does it bring, you know, attentions by the users to this new type of innovations, right? This new typologies of campaigns, and if so, right, I mean, what it is. So let me show you some main results here, and I promise it just will show you some few tables and more graph. So here we have basically our basic model where we have, you know, the funds that each campaign on average in a given category is achieving. And we have, as you can see here, we see that the extent of selective promotions in a given category, which we call category loved, has, you know, a positive impact on the average level of funding that, you know, the campaign gets, right, that receives. Then, of course, as mentioned, the love project, right? So the one that is selected by the platform obviously has, as a positive impact, meaning that it receives, more than not love projects. And then what we see here, which is the interesting part that we're looking also, is at this level of this measure of distinctiveness. So how far apart from other projects in the category that particular project is, right? So it's a measure of distinctiveness, basically tracks a number of, includes, description and things, that the project have. And then it compares this, basically we compare this and then creates, this distinctiveness measure, right? So what happens here is that it's particularly this discount factor, that you deviate from, this convergence to the mean that the market is driving, right? Instead. So the more distinct you are as a project, the worse is for you to get funds. So the less likely. So the lower the funds, you might get, right? So as for said it differently, as you deviate from that prototypical product category, right? You will receive less funds, and eventually you will not be successful at the end, right? So this novelty or innovation, if you want, has a discount factor, right? So there is basically a negative aspect of it. Now, what you see here in the model, right? I mean, particularly model 4, is that this love project thing, right? The selective promotion helps reverting, right? Inverting basically this negative discount, right? So this distinctiveness. It in fact, help distinct projects to succeed and receive, more funds, right? And this is, you see this clearly through the graphs here. So here's the moderating effect, right? They have the category love, which is the extent of selective promotions in a given category, and the distinctiveness. So on the left, right, you can see here that as the number selective, or the extent, which is, the number of selective promotions compared to all the projects, right, that they are running into that category goes up, right? You see that for other projects, so the ones that are not being selected as love project, that are not being promoted, right? I mean, so their ability to acquire resource funds goes up, right? So they increase. And interestingly enough, there is some substitution effect between the love projects, so the ones that are promoted, right? So if you have, more of this selective promotions in the category, actually it lowers the ability of the one being promoted to raise, more funds, right? So there's some slightly negative effect in there. And then it's the opposite for distinctiveness. So for distinctiveness, right, as you can see on the right, so distinctiveness per se as a main effect is negative, right? As I mentioned before, as you depart, there's less, funds that you're able to acquire, right? So you pay that discount. But if you are selected by the platform, right, being promoted, the effect is slightly positive, right? So there is this is an average effect, of course, but you see basically that the effect is inverted. So what you see there as a flat curve, right? I mean, it's actually more than a flat curve, right? Because it inverts completely the trend here. Now, what we did also was we created, to understand a little bit more, right? I mean, what's going on here, we created this 3 categorical binary variables representing basically whether the project reached the funding level, meaning miss on the funding level. So it reached between 0 to 99% of the money they pledge. So to be successful again, right, on Kickstarter, you come up and you pledge some money. So that's the goal you want to achieve, right? And then if you achieve that money, then you get the money, you get the funds, and you pay the fee to the platform. So missing on this is also waste, right? Is also a missed opportunity for the platform to have, raise basically the fees and then revenues for the platform, right? So it's in the self-interest also of the platform to help projects become successful, because then they receive the fee. So the first basically it's unsuccessful projects. Then the second category is basically successful projects. So the one that reach between 100 and 199% of the funds. So almost up to the double of what they pledge. And then we have the last category, which are this we call the superstar. So, that you go beyond or above, 200% of the funding goal. So these are like really, you kind of explode and gets, lots, become very popular. And this the hit project. Now, and these are based on probabilities now. So it's 0-1. So we have, probit here. And as you can see, what the extent of selective promotions does on other projects is that it decreases their probability of failing, right, and not making it slightly. And what it does, it's the central graph that it really push instead, right, the probability of becoming successful, right, just successful, as you can see on other, I'm focusing on other projects, right, and also of course for the love projects. So the more the selective promotion there, the higher, the probability of being successful, where successful is here, reaching funds between 100 and 199%. And what is interesting is that, however, is that it reduces the probability of the promoted projects, right, to actually become superstars. So the more you have the selective promotions there, the lower is the probability of the one being promoted of becoming the hit product. So this is, this is basically to say that they're not helping you to become the new superstar at the expense of other superstars in there, but they're helping those projects that are barely making there. They help them to become actually successful. So that's where most of the effect is coming from. Okay, and it's actually more visible here when we did, additional analysis on the selection. So we want to understand, okay, this make, some sense to us, but we wanted to make sure that, but how do they select these projects, right? Are they picking already the winner? So they anticipate already who's going to be, the one collecting money, and therefore, even without, being loved, they will nonetheless raise this money, and so they're just riding the wave, or are they actually selecting the one that, they might actually fail, but they are good enough to become successful, and so they give that extra kick to make them, things. So we run, a selection model. We'll just don't go through the details. Just show you the two factors that we find in the selections that are really key drivers, right, of the selection model. So the first is we measure now similarity to the top performing projects in the past the past month, basically, that we did, different ratios, past month, past 6 months, et cetera, but basically, right, I mean, taking stock of the knowledge that the platform has on what were, the projects, what characteristics of this projects, right, I mean, were the one, most successful there, and then, likening basically the project to that, so comparing, and then, picking basically the projects that are more similar to those that have been in the past successful in terms of key characteristics, right, that we pick basically from the description. And it seems that, this is in fact the case. So they select those that are, most similar to the one that were past winner, right? And therefore, that's one of the decisional cue, at least the algorithm, right, picks on that, right? So this seems to contradict a little bit, what I've just showed to you, so that they're in fact picking already what they're likely to be successful, right? So because they're similar to the past. So it's sort of feeding what I say, feeding the feed. However, there is another interesting thing, which is this graph. We measure the dead loss in a given category over the past, again, same threshold, 30 days, 6 months, etc. So what is this dead loss? It's basically the percentage, right, of projects that miss the target compared to the one that made it, right? And so basically we compute, this proportion, right? So how big are, so is there more of the project that, fail in a given category versus the one that make it? So that's basically a dead loss for the platform, right? For the market in general, because there might be projects in there that, again, they might have the ability to make it, but they might frustrate also the market and the bakers, the users in there, because they wanted to support this project, because then at the end those projects do not receive the funds and do not, provide them the whatever was promised to the rewards, right? I mean, to the bakers. So the platform might have an interesting fact in addressing these innovation failures, right? And that's what we find basically, that the higher the proportions of dead loss, let me put it this way, right? So the projects that fail in a given category, right? The higher the probability of a project in that category to be picked up by the platform as a love project, so being selected and promoted. So it seems that this is also a key driver, right, for promoting and selecting this. So there is a important aspects I wanted to address these innovation failures. So what's the big point, right? After showing all of these slides, well, and it's still work in progress. Really, we're making sense of this. But if I had to summarize, is that we really find a strong love effect here, where love projects create positive spillovers for other projects in the category, the spillovers are especially strong for the more distinctive, innovative projects that depart from the prototypical product category. Okay, and so our sense of this and the interpretation is that these projects will otherwise be less likely to succeed and reach the amount of pledged funds, as also being explained by the fact that they are selected in the first place according to whether there is a higher failure in a given category, right? And then we also found this in some additional analysis that when we did at the platform level, that the greater extent of selective promotions in a category reduce the level of concentration of the funds among the successful projects in that category, right? So it seems that not only there is a strong love effect, but love is contagious. So it doesn't act. So the benefits of this love do not accrue only to the loved one, but also to the one around. Okay, so and here is, sorry, I think that the graph doesn't show properly, but and here is a visual of that. As you can see here, visually the ratio of that loss is really decreasing after the introductions of these selective promotions, while the proportion of successful projects goes in the opposite direction. So it really jumped. And so it's, you can see that these two lines that really follow the open platform regime, right? Where you have really a drop in the success rate of the projects there. And then a jump in actually dead loss, right? And then in the second regime, where they introduce some corrective tools, right, of this far west, right? I mean, type of market dynamics, where now they have more curation, right, of the interactions of the dynamics in there. And now you see that some of these issues are being at least addressed by the platform. So this is basically the idea that we introduced in the paper of market scaffolding. So why scaffolding, right? Because we start basically from the different assumptions, right? That that's basically derived from the market observation that the value of an offering, right? And now this is a particular one here in the context of crowdfunding, because it's about innovative projects themselves, right? They are not just output, but in any case, the value of this offering is partially constructed in the market. So that's where we realize value, right? So there's basically not a true hidden value in itself. So it's not simply being revealed, that information, which will be the role of certifications and recommendations saying, here's the true value of the offer, right? But in this case, whenever you are facing new value propositions and innovations, right? And these are hardly able, so users are, hard to, these are hard to judge, right? So, and depends also, one reason is that it also depends on the user's knowledge of its value in consumption and the context within its experience. So it might well be that an app, experience within the Apple ecosystem or the Apple, products may have a different consumption experience and therefore value to a users if the same app with the same functionality were to be consumed through the internet, right? So on the computer or on Android devices. So we shouldn't be surprised that then, different users, so Apple users and, Android users might actually be willing to pay for a given app, different prices. And that's, as implication also for policy. We need to be careful in detecting whether, this premium has to do with value in contest and therefore willingness to pay of the consumer, or with barriers being erected by the platform and therefore exploiting, right? I mean, market power and being able to charge more, right? And developers, and therefore developers charging more consumers, okay? So this is, a cautionary note already in terms of implications. And the other reasons why we talk about scaffolding is that because so the need for building a structure in the market, okay, is that even when the platform knows the preferences of a user, the extent that the new offer departs from the prototypical product category, and that is a right match to the user type, is still largely unknown to the platform ex ante. So also the platform has to discover and learn about this, right? And so this scaffolds, right? I mean, this selective promotions, they are really, a mechanism, right, for a discovery tools and mechanisms to support the market structuring around these new value options, right? So in this view, basically, we can think that, the platform design, right, digital markets, platform design digital markets are not just, utility infrastructures for accessing and aggregating existing information that is out there, right? And therefore it just needs to be revealed properly. But they're also knowledge generative mechanisms. So they help also create and generate information that is relevant for, expanding and creating new consumption options. And therefore, that's where, the way that they enable the creation of these new offerings in the first place through the structuring of the market. So in essence, basically, this is, gets us closer to the idea that platforms can be seen as architect of choice that perform, scaffolding, right? So structuring the market for, ideally a superior consumption experience, but obviously this consumption experience will need to, translate into more money being made, right? And that's also where some of the problems may come, right? I mean, because you are architect of choice, those choices may be made, to favor some rather than others, right? So what are the implications? And then I'm really closing with the last two slides. I think that, there is an emphasis on what is new, what is different, but there is a lot of old stuff here, right? So there are old new questions, right? So the old questions of how we organize, the economic activity, and so, related to governance and how we, make these decisions, that are simply recast in this new competitive environments, really, right? So in terms of the platform governance in particular here, I will just, flesh that superior coordination of that supply and demand side does not just imply lowering transaction costs to maximize network externalities, but it also requires, particularly in ecosystem contexts where innovation needs to come together first, right? And it's not produced outside of platform randomly, right? But in those cases, the platform also needs to create this generative knowledge mechanism to create these innovation zones, right? So to allow basically the products to be discovered and properly valued by the consumers. So that the value can be realized in the market to start with. So this is, the essence of shaping the specific complementarities in the market. So rather than letting generic complementarities to emerge and appear, there's a self-governance aspect, right? And this has an implication for the gatekeeping role. So I like to speak more about gatekeeping rather than gatekeeper, because I like to think of it as a critical dynamic governance process, right? As a capability and the process of the platform to govern, and therefore decide basically the rules, not just for membership, but also for engagement and usage of the platform. So when it comes basically to implication for platform regulation, I would say, and that's what I try to say, yes, but not so fast. Okay, and what this implies is that we should be cautious, basically, especially about the presumption that we have that platforms are just gatekeepers. Many of the activities are in fact directed at innovating and creating a differentiated ecosystem that will allow the companies to also escape that winner-take-all dynamics, and therefore, compete on a different basis for innovation and consumer experience. And the more that the platforms explore with this and play with this, they might take us also to contest some other domains, right? And then we are observing greater contestability, in fact, among the big players through their orchestration of their ecosystem. So we should also consider those aspects when we think about platform competition, not about the narrow scope of the core service that the platforms operates, but understanding that those are organizations that will extend their own net, if you want, and their own activities in different directions where they see the value opportunities that are congruent, though, with the overall strategic goal of the company. So they won't enter in any single market just because they can, for the simple reason that they have strategic trade-off. And one important strategic trade-off has to do with the legacy of the company. After all, these aren't just gatekeepers; those are organizations. So there are firms that they are running strategy as usual. All right. And on that note, I think that I might just end up here and. Thank you, and then I will take questions. I guess at this time I've seen that some were popping up in the chat. In any case.